what is called land-based learning. We started 3 years ago, and it was I think it was a 6-week job, and it just snowballed from there on. And now I work with MK also at part-time most of the year, and probably the new year was supposed to start already. I don't know when it's going to start. She still knows. So anyway, land-based learning. I didn't expect it to go where it's at right now. And it's funny that I've been learning my language and my culture most of my life. The majority of 99% of my life. I grew up with a lot of these ways. My dad was a trapper, fisherman. My grandparents were always into the woods, what we call nowadays bushcraft. My grandparents did not see residential schools, and nor did my parents. So a lot of this I like doing. Every now and then, as I'm working on something, I would smile, and Luke would say, "Dad, it's funny." I said, "I'm just remembering either my father or my grandfather or my grandmother, right? And a lot of memories come back as I'm doing this." And when I started, I wanted to imitate what we are teaching in school. I asked few of the teachers. I have no DED, and I don't even have a grade 12. I have a GED grade 12, and I went 2 years to university. It doesn't bother me. I don't think there is no university right now that will satisfy what my need is. It's just who I am. I like a simple way of life. As I was growing up, all I wanted to do was live in the woods. And my dad didn't. And I didn't understand why. But now I understand with my own son. Coming back at night, so my dad used to say, "Terry, you should be home by, you should get out of the woods before dark." I said, "Why?" "Well, I'm afraid that you might get lost." And I told my dad one time, "You know what?" He said, "When I go into the woods, I feel I am at home. It is when I come home I get lost." It seemed like I had no purpose in this world. The world did not satisfy me. I was more interested in what our people did. My grandfather, my father's father, told me when I was a teenager, "You better stop learning the language and stop pursuing what you are doing." And I said, "Why?" "You are going to be sunk poor. You live the Indian way of life, you're going to be sunk poor." And at that time, in the 80s, early 80s, there was really no jobs. Either related to our language, it was never introduced into our schools yet, and no cultural need was needed. We were worried about how to fit into the mainstream world, and we still do today. That is the reason why I believe that we are losing our culture and our language. We are worried about money, academics, economics, everything else other than who we are. But yet we say, and I mean all we use is talk and say, that we want to be Unu and we want to, how we keep our language. Talk is easy. My father-in-law, John D, said, "There's a lot of people that do the talk, but not too many people do something about it. Action is heavier than words itself." So one of the things that what I try to do is the same with Luke. Whatever we think about, we just don't think about it, we do it. We try to create it. And that's what we are doing nowadays. We are recreating what we had. I don't read history books. I don't go to archives. Most of the time, my archives, I go to elders. Either my Uncle Doug, Susie, my mom, and many other elders out there. Those are my books. And I try to visualize what they're talking about. You know what? I learned a long time ago when I was young that my grandfather, my brother asked my grandfather, he said, how did your father teach? My grandfather said he had a funny way of teaching. He said, he asked his father one time, how do you make an X? He told his son, he told my grandfather, get an X. So my grandfather brought an X, he was a young man. He said, put the X up. My grandfather did what his father told him. He said, look down and look up. And he turned it around. He said, turn it around. He did the same thing. He said, now look at it sideways. He said, I looked at it sideways. Turn it around. He said. And my grandfather said, I didn't know where he was going with this, but I did what he told me. And he said, that's what an X handle looks like. Now you make something like that. You know what? I still use that teaching nowadays. So my grandfather went out. He cut the log, and the grains were going the wrong way. His X handle broke. He restarted again. He didn't get the grains right. It broke again. The third time, he didn't give up. He figured out that the grains had to be standing up, and you didn't cross them. And the third time, he made it right, and he ran into it. His father and said, I made it. And his father said, hold on. He grabbed the X. He said, I bet the first time the grains were running this way, and broke. Yeah. He said, I bet the second time the grains were going this way, you still didn't. He said, yeah. And the third time, he figured out, and he told his father, how come you didn't tell me that the first time? His father said, if I told you the first time, you'd probably forget tomorrow. But if you make mistakes, all the mistakes possibly get, you will remember for a lifetime. You have figured it out yourself. This is the way our people do. So he said, if something should go wrong with the X now, you know all the mistakes and you can repair it. So a lot of these things that we make, they're not made for show. They're actually working. I don't make things just for the sake of looking good. Every one of these have to work and they have to be functional. If they don't work, we'll improve on it. So the other thing I teach my son too is that I tell my children and who I teach, there's two types of people in this world. There's leaders and there's followers. I do not follow no man. I'm a leader of nobody. I do not lead nobody. I do not want anybody to follow me, and I do not want to follow anybody else. And this is the same way I teach my son. I do not want to be in front of him, and I do not want to be behind him. I want to be with him. I want to grow, recreating this culture with him. And I hope, that's the way he teaches also. He understands. So we learned a lot the past 3 years now. We did a lot of many sessions. And in my sessions, I tell the children, majority of them are children, I tell them, if I can convince 1% of you guys during my sessions that will take interest and do it, then I am succeeding. If I do 100 sessions, I will get my 100% that way. So I'm at over 60 sessions now, maybe 60%. So we do a lot of stuff. A lot of this is a lifetime of gathering knowledge and wondering. And it's funny, if you have a different job, then this way of life is just a distraction. Same with thinking about words. We don't think about words in our daily life because we have our own jobs. But I can say proudly, if you are paid to do something, and that's the only thing you think about, then it's unreal what you can think about. There was a lot of things that were in front of us that I never realized. The more I do this, the more I understand about our language. One thing I realized at a very young age when I was trapped in immersion with my dad, that our language has two types of understanding. If you only read about our language and not do this way of life, you will only have a mental understanding of our language. You say words that have no meaning. And there's many of them out there, many words out there. We say words that we don't know when we're asked, what does it mean? I don't know. I don't know. I know what it is, but, you know. But as of living in the woods and actually being shown, there's a physical understanding when you live this way of life. You understand words physically. And it's kind of hard to explain, but if you spend more time in the woods, I can physically show you what a word is. Sometimes when I'm told a word, and people cannot explain what it means, but they show me physically. So these are a lot of words that you cannot put into words. There is also silent teaching. There's a lot of silent teaching with native culture. And I seen that growing up, and I remember that the other day. My grandfather and I, you know, we would pound ash and whatever. And I would like, my mind was that I wanted to go swimming. And he always told me, Luis, I am teaching you. And I told him, you got to find a way of teaching. Because the teaching I was used to was in the classroom setting. An educator gets up, and we receive the education. That's the society we are in now. Now, I had to bring my own understanding in what he was doing. And when I grew up, when I wanted to work with wood, my grandfather passed on already. So I started splitting wood. I knew a lot about it, which was only spoken in a few words. And I knew so much. And a lot of it was a silent teaching. I watched my dad out. The other thing about this program that I like, and I seen Calvin Stevens practice with his son, father and son relations. We are losing that. We are losing mother and daughter relations. We are not spending time with our children anymore. How are we supposed to continue with our culture, learning our culture or our language? That is one of the things that we are lacking now. And recently, we are losing the community way of living. Nobody goes out to visit anymore. For thousands of hundreds of years, that's how we taught our language, our stories and whatever. So there's a lot of things that we need to prepare that we are overlooking. So anyway, these are some of the items that we are trying to figure out. I got a pair of snowshoes that belong to our great-grandfather, Richard Denny, and those snowshoes were made, I don't know if it's close to 100 years, I can say anyway. He was born in 1892, so his first son was born in 1914, so this man that made him, his name was Blunchin Never, Frank Never. Anyway, he made snowshoes for me. And they were at my grandfather's for the longest time. I have them now. They're fine mesh. So there's another pair I got, my dad bought, and it's a similar one. I always wanted the ones that tip up. So I said, this year I want to take part of what my great-grandfather's was, the part I grew up with, and I want to lift them up. There is no nails, there is no glue on this, no iron. Now the webbing, I couldn't figure out the webbing. And sometimes we gotta search with our other tribe brothers and sisters. So I got an Algonquin friend that almost talks similar to us. Language is so similar. And he explained to me, I asked, why is the mission? My grandfather's shoes are tightly meshed. He said, in our culture we have two types of snowshoes. For soft snow, early snow, when it's fluffy, you need the big mesh. So when you lift them back up, the snow drains out real fast. In the late winter, he said, we used the tight mesh ones when the snow is hard and fluffy. He said, that's all I can explain. He said, almost every snowshoe works the same way in North America because he built many different types of it. So that was one of the understandings I got about. So this year, I'm different. I'm going to have a tight mesh right here, and of course right here, and maybe a tight on the front. That's to be different, I think. The other thing that I got a passion with is bow making. Seems like not one bow is not always enough. No. Oh, what? Yeah, we are selling tickets on this one right here. It's a 51-inch short bow. And the reason why we are selling tickets is we want 3D archery targets in behind our school. So the kids are going to be selling there also. We start selling today anyway. You don't joke here, right? So anyway, they're $5 a ticket, and I don't know if they're here or at the truck. They're in the truck anyway. Yeah. Well, I have tickets for this anyway. If you're interested in it, it's a good fundraiser for the school. The other wood that we don't have, one of the things that my grandfather always told me is when you unstring a bow, it's chigil, string follow they call it. When you unstring it, it's still big. They always thought it was the wood. And there was certain wood that you had to use. There was no way he would choose a wood that's squiggly like this one. Because they always wanted something straight grain, no nuts on it. But nowadays, when we started, that's what I started off with. But the more you get into bow making, and you get, the more curvy the wood now is what we are using now. Because we are almost at an advancement. And it took me 47 years to figure out a lot of it. I heard a lot of stories growing up how the elders in Chapel Island, they used to bend them, steam bend them this way, then the other way. And they used to put them over, they used green wood. And all these things there. And we tried these at the shop there. For 3 years, we mixed a lot of things. A lot of things worked and a lot of things worked. And we started to understand more about wood now. So this is Osage orange. It comes from Florida area. I think the Cherokee use so this is a real strong one. And our bows this year, I think we're going to make a bow making course for Bach and Keck this year with the youth. And they're going to use the bows to hunt their moose this year. So this one right here will kill a moose easily. It won't break. They've been bent close to 1,000 times already with the tillery. The only problem with this bow right here, or the bows I make, lots of times, the ones we got right here, I cannot use them in other communities because it only takes a jump to pull these back. Any jumps out there? Number 2 has no hopes there, so. Anyway, scrap pieces of wood we save at the school, and we glue them up into hoops there, and we make green peppers out of them. So, nothing's wasted at the shop there. We don't buy too much stuff there. Lots of times we harvest our own wood. This is one of the first projects we made when we started. My Uncle Doug asked me, can you make me a Warosky? And he likes throwing words out there that I don't understand. And which I really like. Being corrected or told the word is one of the best things for me. You know, I don't take offense in being corrected. You know, there's going to be times that I use the word wrong. But if you are not corrected, then we are drifting off. So I think correcting other people is very important. You know. So anyway, I made this, and he was talking about it. I couldn't picture out like, and as he was saying it, I pictured this part right here, and I told him I remember. He said, "How can you remember?" I said, "My grandfather made one about 1980, and both Polish bought it, and I think he went out to the States." So my buddy Andrew Lafford had one, and he invented and loaned me one. Then when I was done with this one, this is what my version of it anyway, what I pictured in my mind. And I took it to Bach and Keck, and I took it into a solid tape to show my friend Terry. And Rod Phillips was there, and which he helped me quite a bit. He told me how his father did. And the more I showed this, the more people remembered. There's about 50, 60 different ways, maybe more, of how to make this. And the thing is, nothing comes in instruction. mistakes will be made, and mistakes are there for a reason. But nowadays, when you buy, if you were to buy this in an IKEA or something, you will be given instructions on how to make it. And what part of the instructions will it say, oops, that's a mistake, don't do that. Nobody misleads you in this world. But in our culture, mistakes are there for a reason. You are allowed to make mistakes in our culture. So anyway, Alaska, there's another one out in CBU. And I'm going to be making different sizes. One of it is the larger ones, as Rod was saying. They're axe handle and a half wide and 3 axe handles long. A lot of our people do not know how to read the tape. I was one of 4 or 5 years ago, and it never occurred to me to learn. So, but nowadays I can read it. So there's no glue, there's no pegs on this. The other thing is, what I learned from Rod was this one, the harnesses. This one's made out of rawhide, and it goes over the forehead and underneath the armpits, and you pull with your spine. So this one, the harnesses are tied to this pole right here. Your hands are free. One thing I'm proud to say, I don't take credit. Rod takes the credit with this one. And I mention them everywhere I go. Why climb a mountain? The hills are like this. This goes only here like this one. Why climb under like that? Coming down on the mountain with a heavy load, he said the men cut a stick like this. This part that goes across right here, Engineer, the cross piece, is very important for the slave. And what they did is they got the harnesses down. The slave would be coming towards them, and they would jam it in, and they would slow it down. This is how they got the load down on a hill like this. Modern day slaves, with a brake system, you have to be on. So we're a few years ahead of them already. The old way is still ahead. Alaska. Might as well got this. The other thing is ice fishing. I always wondered how are people doing. There is no, if you Google it or look for, there's either iron ice picks up there. And I don't know what it looks like. So I can cut stone at the school there. And it's easy to cut stone, although it's hard. And I use another stone, a little bit of pea gravel water, and I rub against it. It doesn't take long to shake. But I also cut it with the grinder. So I know what the steel one was. So I said, I wonder if I can make similar one with a stone. And I did. And I was going to cut these branch off. And one of the problems you have with the goose pigment is when your gloves get wet, you lose it. I lost 2 of them like that. So I kept these on. I don't know why I never thought about it. So this is a nice goose pigment. Stone and rawhide. George John Sunnypath made this for me. My grandmother Sue made me one when I was young. I was 8 years old when my dad started that first tractor. And for 12 years I had a basket. It did not have a belly, all it was just a rectangular one. And I used it. And there was 2 straps on it. And I would travel about a mile prepping, and every now and then I get a beaver. And I would have this on, and I would chuck the beaver in. But I would walk home like this, because I didn't want to stand up. I was afraid my basket might rip. And so nowadays, we use modern day backpacks. So I said, I want to make one out of nothing. So I did. There's no glue on it. I use rawhide for placing, a couple of simple notches and pegs and whatever. And this one can go over this. I can also put the meat over it and tie this over it. So this one's more versatile. And hopefully I'll get rawhide straps out of this and use this fall. But we also got the expensive ones. So it all depends, you know, if this is not done, I'm not gonna worry, I got a few. And we got about 7 or 8 now backpacks. And hopefully the kids will walk in. Dip Down, this one's called Dip Down. Fantastic. Hopefully I'll get another one made soon. Made a harpoon. I made this last year with the Great Falls. And I never finished it. So I went to recipes during March break. From there till here, somewhere, I don't know. I lost the tip. I made one this week. So I said, I might as well lace it up. And it's made out of rawhide cordage. And there's a slip knot that goes on. By the time I can get it done now. Anyway, there's a slip knot that goes on. So when this goes on to the animal, seal hunting played a major role among our people. Nowadays, we do not have access to the Atlantic Ocean. All the reserves that were near the Atlantic Ocean, they were removed during centralization. But we are only living inland with our lakes. Hardly any seals to keep the population. At one time, there were millions of seals, and they hunt them all year round. Majority of the year, they use the seal hides and the seal fat. So this harpoon is meant to go into the seal, right through the flesh, and when you pop it back out, this disengages. And as you pull, this goes sideways. So the harpoon does not fit into the hole it came in, and you can pull a seal out of the ice. I might get Joe to test this out this year. Like seal. But you know, it's been a long time. I don't even know none of our people know how to cook seal anymore. I know I do. So this is one of the spears. This one was found near restitution. What was it? Saltfish. So there was. Anyway, it was carbon dated 600 years old. This is not the actual one. I don't carbon copy other people's work, but this one we made an exception. So we were given the information on it, and I told, look, why don't you make it? And we'll figure it out how it works. There was no handle for it because they only found this. So we made it, and the first one worked real well until he broke it in half, but the bone was portfolio. So we made another one. And this one worked real good. All I got to do is put a cord on it. I don't know what they used it for. I'm not sure if they used it for seals. Eels? No. The salmon are huge out there. Seagull was abundant in the 1700s, like it is now. The other thing they got out there is sturgeon, is it? Pretty sure they got sturgeons out in First Division. The sturgeons grow so anyway, that could have been used there. So that's the only replica we got. The kids ask me, Terry, can you make this? I can make anything. That's the confidence I got, you know. And the more you make something, it only snowballs with other things. So this one is on at level. Goes on a thrower like this. Now, at level, I believe, I'm not 100% yet, and I asked people to research. I believe at level is written in our language in Old French. It is pronounced as adlet. I don't know if it may be written, but that's what I see when I study Old French. This will multiply your throw up to 6 to 7 times more. If you were just to throw the dart with your own hand, I would not probably reach the ball. Now, if I use this here to throw it, I could throw it here to the hospital. But it's a rainy year. So anyway, so who came up with this one? the tips removed, and we also have different ones. We use bone arrowheads and spare points. And the reason for it is I tell people, anthropologists, archaeologists, and all these scientists in this world interpret our history and who we are. It seems like an academic person, other than us, that has knowledge of the land, our words are only as high as the horns. If you take a bone arrowhead and a stone arrowhead, you throw them into the woods. 500-600 years after, a scientist comes around, picks it up. He's only going to find a stone one. The bone one will disintegrate. History books will be written. These people use stone arrowheads. Stone arrowheads, if you actually use them, one shot, one deal. It kills the animal. Majority of the times they will break. A bone arrowhead can be reused up to a dozen times, which is more practical. The other thing is, stone is hard to find in Cape Breton. I know there's some in Restigouche. I'm just waiting for word here where they find the Cora. They say from Restigouche to Vespavilia there might be some flint rock or whatever. There's a couple of places out here, maybe out in Lewisburg, Flint Island. I'm not sure if it was came with the Europeans, they were taking flint out of their baluses. I'm sure you. The other one would be in Egonish, on an island there. They use some sort of a church. And the other one would be at Wheatgate over Little Narrows. Now, Escazone area, I never found, I think Tom Stores found somewhere around. But they're hard to find around here. Okay. So most of the times they needed the bone. For 200 years they weren't allowed to hunt moose deer. So we've been using a lot of bone now. We save a lot. The other thing is, I got Susie Marshall always told me that a moose has 8 bones that you can make out of dice. My grandmother used to talk about it too. I didn't understand until I showed Susie the other day. Yeah, that's the one. That's the ankle, right, the wrist. And they're natural. A lot of Walter's bones that we see split in half, this will never split in half because the grains are growing in many directions. So that's the original one. Now, they got 8 of them because they did not have the modern tools we have. So I'm going to try to split it and double up what I have. Other than that, they used to grind them all these way down and make one dice out of it. People throw these away. They don't teach their value. We save a lot. The deer hide over here was thrown away in the dump, and we brought it back to the school. The kids cleaned it up. Now it's all rawhide. Bone knives. We also make bone knives. This one's chipped. But we can always sharpen it up. The bone knives we make are so sharp, they'll cut paper just the same way as a normal iron knife. Bone knives are used to slice meat. There is no knife in this world right now, even with the super steels, that will cut steel. I gotta cut bone. Pieces of glass like stones or sharp stones like flint were used to be flaked off, and they take the little pieces, and that's what they use to cut the animals open. And then the bone knife. Wawan means a bone blade with a wooden handle. That's what it translates. Now this one is a bone knob. We also make. It's called sabigan, but there's another word I'm not going to say. I'm sure some of you have heard it before. Halo, jadi dong, kita mau ini mana guys?
Gimana mana? Good.
Anyway, it's easy to do, and I thought it was a joke. Then I asked the elder, yeah, how to do it. Anyway, my version of a dip net. Over here. It's made out of black ash. I was going to use spruce roots, but I didn't have time. And I was going to make my cordage out of bark. And I didn't have time for that yet. So you never know. And I want it to be simple as possible, with simple tools. You know, first thing we see is a rounded one, eh? I saw something different. So I weaved this the other day here. Is it ever stiff? It might work on smelt, and it may not work at all. And if it don't work, you can use it for collection. There's tickets on sale. So the only way is to try it out, you know. The other spear, Squanto asked me to make a spear in this Amazonia. They didn't want any iron, like the old iron smelt spear. So he said, can you come up with something else? I said, I'll try. But they didn't let it. And, yeah, it was higher. So in Guadalajara, you can use your hands to grab the smelts in many places also. But there are some places like in this zone, the water's so steep, you know. And so I thought about it. Well, so there's no glue holding this. It's just the way the pegs are arranged. They're fighting each other. So I come up with this one, and I thought about my fingers. That's all it does. So we used it at the little brook. And my son, the other son there, he went. And there were big stones there. Dad, there's lots of stones there. He said, what if it breaks? I said, try breaking. And if it breaks, we'll improve on it. So the grains on this one are all lined up, just like this, the hardest part of wood. And I arranged them that way. And sure enough, they're springy like a bow. This same technology applies to the same thing as bow making. So what you use with this one will also, the idea is it will also work with this one and other parts. So it works. It works real good on soft bottom. The other one is that goes on the throwing spear. I told Luke wanted to create something. He was interested in the survival spears, like this one right here. They're all over the internet. I said, you want to create something? I said, well, make something that works. So he came up with the tree system with us, and I didn't even work with that. Sometimes I got my fingers stuck in there, and it's meant to be a throwing spear. We are so busy, we never had the time to try it out. So this one might be the garbage pile also, but you never know. Looks good anyway. The other one is this one. Eagle for eel spears. Now in Africa they have these bigger spikes because they got funnier button up here. But out in Chapel or in this zone we got hard button. A lot of the spikes growing up there were made out of steel. And these pegs are arranged like this. That's why you don't need to rack. The old ones that were racked. And I started using bowling. And I tell people there, a lot of people don't understand what diggle means, see? And when I carry something like this, and I negate when I carry something like this. The spear does the same thing. When the eel goes, it goes passing through there. And these things, they hold the eel. That's why they're called eagles. That's how they hold the fish. Down the line. Hockey sticks. We also make hockey sticks. I'm going to take the credit. These ones were made out of alder. I believe in 1974 they stopped making these in this zone. Ration checks went up. So they weren't poor anymore. The hockey sticks were about $4.95 at the time. This one's made out of yellowbirds. So we did a little bit of wood burn design. If I had 200 of these, I could sell these for $200. That's how popular they are. I made 21 of them. And the wood takes a long time to dry. So Mario Lemieux's wife came down for Lodec in November, and she saw my house. So I'm hoping Mario will come down now. And I will give him one. Although he's a millionaire, I will give him. That's just who I am. So anyway, hockey. They asked me if the hockey is, how does it relate to what? Hockey originated from our people. And one thing that we don't understand nowadays, we got Rand, we got also the Francis Smith style, we got all these different styles of language. And the thing that we are forgetting is the French were here, the first ones among us, for 250 years. They translated everything. And at that time, the French was different than the French that we use nowadays. It was old French. And in the 1800s, when they intermarried with the English, the French that we hear nowadays in Canada is spoken in an English form. Now, in Old French, hockey was written by the French in our language. In Old French, the H is pronounced like a T or a D sound. And it's funny. Some things are right in front of us, and yet we search for answers way down the end there. We never look what's in front of us. So hockey, H-O-C-K, is pronounced as do. E-Y, do, I. But when I play, I say do what? I add a W. We use that word nowadays. We never thought that it was written this way. Now, what does it relate to hockey, I said? I know what Nubada means. It means a loud echo sound. So I made a ball out of spruce. And when I used it, that's the sound it makes. Then it dawned on me, it made sense. It translates to the loud echoing gate. Nubada. That's what it translates to. So we got these there. The other thing I keep saying I'm going to make, and I am going to make. I'm going to make ice skates out of bone. I was supposed to do it this year. The year's not over yet. And hopefully this following year I'll have somebody test them out other than me. The other thing I like taking is in my sessions is this one. It's funny how land-based learning or being on the land, lots of times you get meaningful or start understanding what the language is. We say words that are meaningful right now. The millions of words in English, and I don't know how many words in our language, coincidentally there's two words that sound the same. And one of them is this. In our language, this one is called goks. Goks kajij. And I used to correct my grandmother. You. Isn't you're supposed to say cups kajij? No. Goks kajij. And I always thought it was Mickey. And I said, what does it mean? I don't know. It's just been called that way for a long time. It wasn't until last year when I was asked, what's the word for waterfall? That's one of the words I never. So I called a friend of mine out in New Brunswick, Gilbert Sewell. He's real good at reading old articles. He's real good with the language. And I asked him, Gilbert, what's the name for waterfall? Gops. He said, there's a place out there called Gopska. Oh, okay. So I went down and I told my buddy Thomas George. He said, geez, waterfall. I said, Gops. I was real proud of my new word of the week. Geez, I said, maybe that's where Gopskajij comes from. And it dawned on me. If I fill this up with water and pour it, what does it make? Little waterfall making. And that's what he translated all this time. Gopskajij. So anyway, I use this for my lesson there. And I tell people, coincidentally, cups is just a coincidental combination. Similar sounding word, but it's not. Oh, the other thing we like making is people. These ones came in North America about in the 1840s. It's a hybrid of the American and the American native flute and the European flute. And the natives, they used something like bagosi or some sort of a cane like flutes. And they were 5-hole. This one is 6-hole. And we also tuned these. This one is in the key of G sharp. We also make them in F sharp, G, all the way up to A. And all these are all tuned at the school. So we made about 40 or 50 of these at the school. And we can wood burn them any way we want. So they're nice fun projects for the students that want a simple project. Well, doesn't want to play.
That song is called Tickets Are on Sale.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention that, $5. And boys learn it, really. It's good when you can finish your father's sentence. You know you're spending enough time. We don't have tools. Sometimes I see my grandfather make their own tools. Many other fathers make their own tools, basket making and whatever. The other thing is they use a lot of wrap, and the only reason they wrapped a lot of their tools, they didn't have epoxies or what we have nowadays. And if the handle broke down, they would unwrap it and they would make another one. But nowadays, I used to say, those are real uncomfortable, and if I started making them, they're not going to come with the wrap. And guess what? That's what we do nowadays. Now, Luke is into knives there, and he started and I told him, when he started, Dad, what I said, he started buying knives. Then he said, Dad, I sharpen my knives every week. I said, if you're going to have knives, learn how to sharpen them. So I gave him the tools. I mean, nowadays he's better at it than me. He'll see it minute, and he's got good quality steel now, sharpened nice and hard. So we make these. Whatever we need at the school, we can make. I think we are the only school in Canada that wears knives. We wear big knives, and the thing is, the concept, I tell children, and if you ask the children about what is this? They'll say it's a tool. And that's the view they have. They don't see it as a weapon. What Luke is wearing is not a weapon because they see it every day. And to them it's a tool. They don't even bother them or whatever. The first year we had one kid try to grab it. That was one incident. Other than that, we got the readiest kids out there. They don't even bother. Now, the only thing they got to make, we make police slips for them to take these homes. And same with the bows. I am not responsible when they take them home. I got the first batch and I didn't let them, but this year I want to take them on. I tell them, you shoot someone other than in the school, don't look at me. Because it's signed away already. The other thing is we make rabbits. Christmas concert time. It was in October. 2 months. We made 40 some odd rabbits. Getting ready for a big debut at the Christmas concert. So what I did, I polished them. This one I made stars, I would burn, I went all out. And I polished them until the grains were polished. Barricaded them, a lot of work went into it. 2 months. Christmas concert day came, I went to see the kids there. And they sang, and that was it. Too much work. I blame Ann Lander for that. But at least they could have did this at the end. Oh well. That's it. Arrowheads. Can't make a bow without arrows. This one right here, this one they look similar. This one is a store-bought hardened dowel, imitation sinew, and crazy glue on a bone. This one is the arrow shaft we make at the school. By scrap. Pine pitch glue, look, 8, and it's wrapped in real sinew. They're both equal. Maybe this one's even better. They're both, it's just the set, the pine tar wood. This one has crazy roots there, that's why. They're both identical except different grooves, and this shaft will break because the brains are. So we also make the arrows, and hopefully this year we'll get something. Canoe pedals. We got access to canoes out down below that. That's the other thing to it. A lot of schools I travel, or a lot of communities, they do not have access to a wooded area or near water. And I believe that our place is ideal. So we made 16 of them, I think, or 14 of them. And my Uncle Doug there, I always mention everywhere I go. He said that, I said, Don, is it? It's not a Don, he said. And I always like being corrected. I said, what is it? We'd nut. His father is okay, we'd nut. Don is the ore, the white man's ore. Or European ore, I should say. So anyway, that's why I take it with me. To show people that the correct word for it. Walters bowls. Some of them are heavy. They say yours are real heavy and thick. Nothing worse than when you're playing a game of Walters with the sharp edges like this, and the next 3 days you can't even touch anything. And they're pouncer. So I made mine there a little bit softer on the palm there. And sometimes the bowls they use are really narrow. So what happens, you hit your knuckles. Oh my God, you think your palms with your knuckles. So I make mine nice and high there. And they say they're heavy. Well, I said, do you ever see anyone play Walters like this? You know? You're only lifting it up about this much. So that's the way I make my bowls. Cheese mom. We make these also. I don't know why we stopped making them. People don't like it. But they don't realize that this played a lot in our community. It just played a major role. Now, there were times that they say that we weren't even allowed to have drums because of the Christianity. And in Bordeaux, a lot of marriages were arranged by us. And in Bordeaux, every year they would come. And probably many other places they also had gatherings. In our culture, there is no such thing as 8 custom. 7 custom is the limit. Elabudum. That's the word. That's why the word means elabudum. Eluigan. That's what it means. 7 custom. After that, the badus or the grand council they would let you marry. And but if you couldn't find or you know, a young man get up, I'm stuttering. Every day I'm running out of words. I don't know. Anyway, the young man would get up, and either their grandparents or their grandmother or they would sing for them. And one of the songs that they would dance when they were looking for a wife. And one of the songs they used to play that we heard a lot is Guadalupe, 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 Guadalupe. It means bring your sisters. There's a young man that's looking for a wife dancing. And in other parts of that song, it would go, it means not a young woman. There's a young man that's dancing, looking for a wife. And these went on till the 1960s. My mother's parents are arranged marriages. But I don't think my mother or grandmother danced. I was going to take her to Chapel Island. She was supposed to say, no, she said, hey, you're fooling that woman. She said, hey, it's all fish, she said. So anyway, Jeep Mom. We also have little caravans that go on to the flute or anything. A lot of our children, and I tell our people and our children, we are not born with these ways. We are not born with the language. We are not born with any of these talents. We are born with nothing. We don't even have a name when we are born. There's no such thing as culture or anything. This is what we develop ourselves. So we start off with a lot of children can draw 1D, 2D, but can you make it into 3D? And when he started there, he didn't grow up seeing a draw knife or whatever, like what I seen with my grandfather. So we started carving. And a lot of it's just hand-eye coordination. Hey, small little things make up huge things. And that's all it is practice. The more different things you make, the more you can make. Now, in Borlodek, our program is called, in the English, it's called land-based learning. I don't call it that. Well, I'm supposed to call it that way. That's my. But it's called, I call it Yamani language. And it translates to, let's make something from nothing. And that's mostly what we try to do when I build something. Can you make something from nothing? Easier said than done. So anyway, might as well throw this up. We had a fundraiser for Christmas. And we made deers and we made all these deer. They went pretty good. Oh, so I don't know what else to talk about. We also have rawhide. These were thrown out in the dump. And a lot of these, this year we're going to cook up the intestines of a moose. And we're going to eat it all. We're going to smoke it. And I have a friend that's, that was Woodland Creed, isn't it? Yeah, Woodland Creed. The words are so similar. He said, Pete, you don't know how to cook I said, for 200 years we weren't allowed to cook or hunt moose. So there's a lot of things we are trying to just find out. So he said, he'll show me how to do how to creed, and how they smoke it and how he said about that. That's one thing we're going to learn this year. The other thing the meeting, stone axes. Whoa. So we make stone axes also. And I teach them, two kits are the main thing. And this one works a little bit different than the other one. It kind of peels, but I'm just happy. It works real good. Now, if I were to throw really fast, it'll go in a little bit deeper. The thing I tell children is, or when I teach the students is, just don't cut down the tree. You got to understand what type of wood and what type of year the trees take. We don't think about that stuff nowadays. People don't even think about how a tree drinks. We see them every day. But a lot of people, when we see a tree there, if you are not connected to the land or even go outside, you will never understand. How a tree drinks, you don't see the water pump on a tree, but yet a tree drinks water. People do not realize it. When the moon comes on the full moon side, there's a gravitational pull. We don't see it, but it's strong enough. It lifts the water right out of the ground, right up to the top of the trees. When the moon goes to the other side, on the black moon phase, it draws the gravity on the other side. All the water comes down off the tree there, and then the cycle continues back and forth, but yet you do not see it. Now, when you harvest wood, people don't realize when they harvest a firewood, is that when you cut wood on a black moon phase, you will not have to worry about moisture because it's on the other side of the earth. Now, when you also cut it during the winter months, when the tree goes dormant, then you also have less sap. So, this one was harvested in the winter months. According to who?
Those noted, there are tickets for sale on this.
One more time, you got tickets for sale.
Really help the school and make some kids happy. No pressure.
Alright, so anyway, the X was made, there are certain spots, there's pressure points on these, and they work. Too bad I couldn't continue
We'll be here again tomorrow.
Tomorrow we'll have 2 other sessions. We were hoping to have an outdoor session today, but it rained. And hopefully tomorrow will be better weather. We'll do a little bit of cooking. And then probably a repeat of this.
All right, so wala di Terry, Luke. Are these their gifts?
Thank you very much. What all you just support to all year. I cannot forget that. Good opportunity. I have a real good opportunity. I do not have high academics. And that's only just paper. And what I tell the kids there, knowledge weighs more than what you can put into your backpack. Anyway, wala niyo, nakadagdag yung siguro.
All right, just going to go through the agenda for tomorrow. Exit Punog, 8 to 9, breakfast and registration at the same place. Keynote at 9 o'clock, we saw 10:30. Melody Budak, Priscilla St. John, Wajadijiga, Saskatchewan, and they did a nice keynote in Fredericton. So I think it would be really, really wonderful for us to hear what they're doing out there. Terry Denny is scheduled for Goose Cap C. We will move him into this room tomorrow morning. And then his outdoor session at the Heritage Park. All these other wonderful sessions lined up. Jane Meter and Lefty are doing a naming ceremony. I believe that is full for tomorrow. But they're doing 2 sessions. I know for sure the morning session is full. I don't know about the nighttime session. So we're going to do 3 prizes. We'll start with the Fitbit. You have to be here to win. Those are the rules. We'll then do the Google Home, and then we'll do the Apple Watch. All right. 369-2616. For real? All right, go on down, Chief.
Elada.
Shara might want to take pictures. Yeah. You gotta come down. Shara wants to take pics.
Blair, remind all of us, because you know that there's vendors downstairs. There's
Okay.
hardly anybody there.
Okay. And just a reminder, folks, we have vendors downstairs, craft people. You'll get a ticket tomorrow for visiting. And don't forget, Terry is a vendor. This is for the Google Home, 369-2940. Anyone? Oh wait, my phone's ringing.
Up one more time.
369-2940. When?
Good one.
Going once.
Going twice.
2940. Uh-huh. All right, move on.
I like the color purple.
I was gonna say, holy man, this is the same number. 369-2540.
Oh my goodness.
I heard like,
Must have been one number close.
all right, one more. Yeah? Yeah. All right, Apple Watch Series 4.
Thank you. Thank you.
2158. 2158.
Oh, over there.
Claudette. Caroline. Jabua.
Yay!
We have more Apple Watches. We have Apple, iPad Pro,
iPhone X.
iPhone X, more Fitbits, Apple TV, and clothing and more swag coming to you tomorrow. 2158. No tickets for tomorrow. Every session will get a ticket. Every vendor visit will get a ticket. More and more tickets, folks.
Jump field.
Use the garbage when you dump the tickets.
Where? Alwyn. They said to announce the open mic tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, testing. So just to remind everybody, there's open mic tonight, 7 till 9.
And food.
And there'll be some food too. So, open mic tonight. So Darren Stevens and Emma Stevens.
Is that the one?
You gotta smile, Caroline.
No, I'm not smiling.
No, I'm not smiling.
She even knows I don't smile. I know. The happiest kid around life. Me? All my brothers, all the brothers. It's not no, it has to be medical. She reacts from it. No, but the what's good? It's not like diagnosed kind of thing. Every time she tried it, you went plus the box, react to it. So negam get it on something got to be good. That has no no wonder why. This is to it that I'm talk, huh? I'm not complaining. Yes. All of it. So. But anyway, gagawin, magpwede din pa yun.
Jump this Parudi, is this before or after the event?
I don't know.
Hello?
Good?
Jump this Parudi, this is after the event.
No, after this. Like now.
Boardroom, huh? Boardroom, mama guy.
Tapos din.
Walim sige, boardroom. Why did it?
Yeah, we're due. It's just quick. So basically what our students are going to do is clean up loads of sessions where we'll have gifts. Like I had to give Terry that. I know I should have, but you know what I mean? Things that make the sessions the same. When you put them under the table. Yeah.
open mic night. So now whenever it's in talk, to Emma Darren stuff.
Charles.
Gosh, again.
Oh, what you do?
Edlinto, and how are the first 10 first 10? Oh, first 10, yeah.
First 10. Tego için. Tabii yani o tego için ne yapıyor?
Daniel Mauper from Bradford.
Bana bir şey mi? Ne bu da güzel. Tabii sonra atıyor da. That's it.
All the time, the memories mark up.
What you want like?
All the time, the memories mark up. Yeah, we got to go. Happy first happy anniversary, first lady, and she got to go. I hope you like your guys' gifts. And still to this day, we get to go every year. 4 years ago, anniversary. Yeah, 4 years ago.
Gidelim, hadi öyle mi yapalım? Ondan sonra. Hadi Aki. Interesting. Ha?
Sabor regalo ne geldi? Sağ olsun. I have them. There's 3. I brought them.
Like weekend, huh?